For Real News is sponsored by assholes like you, so pay up, motherfucker.
Wealth inequality continues to define America. And here in Baltimore, that growing divide is easy to see. Great wealth and abject poverty exist side by side, sometimes separated by just a few blocks. And nowhere is that more apparent than the subject of our show, Perkins Homes. It's a low-income development that houses over 600 families, but it's also right next door to the city's Gold Coast, known as Harbor East. And now the city has turned over the rights to overhaul it to a developer who's built gleaming towers with help of big tax breaks. And it's a move that's raising concerns among residents and advocates. And it raises the question, will gentrification envelop this community like it has others? To help me.
Okay, there's a topic that I haven't really touched that much myself, which is gentrification. For a long time, cities were looking for gentrification because it would remove urban blight, because many communities that were once thriving in the inner city were basically crumbling. What was happening in Detroit, which never really stopped in Detroit, was happening all over America, but even in cities that are considered more to be cosmopolitan, like New York City. In the mid to late 70s, New York City was one of the least safe cities in the country. You had rampant crime. There were crazy cases of arson in New York, in the Bronx especially. That's why there's a famous quote, "The Bronx is burning," which happened during a Yankee game. There was an announcer, I don't remember who, I'm kind of ashamed, but yeah, I think his name, Phil Rizzuto, I think the Yankees announcer, had the famous quote that the Bronx is burning because there were just these landlords that would torch their apartments because it would cost more to maintain their low rent apartments than it would be to properly bring them up to code. So it was just a shit show the whole way through. So what exactly is gentrification, therefore? What that means is that the cities would attract people that are successful young professionals. They would, in turn, rejuvenate the community through capital infusions. There's plenty of that going on in my city at the moment, or the largest city that's close to me. And you would just see the city would finally gain like a real middle class tax base again when they'd lost so many of them to the suburbs, and most of their tax revenue would have to come from businesses. Now, sure, they could raise taxes on businesses, right? And they have been. However, the real issue after that would be, would businesses want to stay in a city that taxes them higher when they can just go somewhere else? And that's a real question that has been plaguing the people that are running these cities throughout the country since the gentrification began, or before that. Is it better to tax your residents, or is it better to tax your businesses? Some would say that it's actually better to tax both of them low. Okay, but in this case, we're seeing a city that's trying to attract more people that are successful, young professionals that will invest in the city. And the Real News, among other progressive outlets, is now setting itself against gentrification. Now, you would think, isn't that a little weird? A lot of these people that are calling themselves opponents of gentrification are themselves, guess what? Agents of gentrification, because many of them are from the suburbs. They're or they were born outside the city, and they're coming in, and by default, if they're getting paid a higher rate, then they are raising the rents in the city. They are getting, which, that's one of the issues that people decry gentrification for. They're raising the rents in the city, and they're making it harder for the poor residents to afford it. And, by the way, they are making it more and more difficult for advocates of public housing to find more space for new projects.
Let me answer this and more is a panel of people who know the subject matter intimately. Lucky Crosby is a former whistleblower for the Baltimore Housing Department. Taya Graham is a reporter for the Real News Network. And Jeff Singer is the former executive director of Healthcare for the Homeless and professor at University of Maryland School of Social Work. But before we get to...
Can I just say real quick that that Jeff Singer guy, it really I mean, when you go on camera, forget if this was on the radio, this interview would be able to take on a much more serious demeanor. But this guy kind of becomes an eyesore throughout the video. He doesn't look as ridiculous. He doesn't sound as ridiculous as he looks. But now that you see him on camera, it kind of detracts from the whole content. But I guess don't judge a book by its cover.
I'm not a part of that world. It seems like it's another world over there.
From the window of her apartment in Perkins Homes, Tanita Wilson can see a Baltimore much different from where she lives.
It's beautiful. I can lay on my bed and look and dream that one day maybe I'll have an apartment or something beautiful like that. But that's all I can do is just look and observe.
It is a world of gleaming towers and pricey homes, known as Harbor East. But she took us on a tour of her apartment, part of the low-income housing project called Perkins Homes, where the city's largesse is nowhere to be seen.
Now here is where I have stuck foam in. And when you close one hole up, they'll eat right next to it.
She has battled mice, black mold, and insects. The water damage remains unfixed. She has even experienced harassment from maintenance workers.
Either they're trying to get your phone number, they're trying to have sex with you.
Okay, this is the part where, you kind of understand why I can't make fun of these people. I mean, black mold is no joke. It does lead to serious respiratory disorders. The name escapes me at the moment. Mice, other things in the home. Yeah, if you have the government, they are obligated to, and whatever housing authority, just like your landlord. Would you accept a landlord that doesn't get rid of rodents? They have to put fucking caulk in the cracks and all that. Would you accept black mold, which is life-threatening potentially in your house? And I don't know. I don't think in this video it says if she has children or not. But around your kids growing up around black mold, horrible way to grow up. And it's really a serious case here where it's pointless now to complain about people living in public housing as just for the sake of complaining about them. There really has to be a true solution to it.
I want to charge you for all of these things, so it makes you really not even want to call them.
But she still has hope and dreams of change, which is why she, along with other residents, spoke to the Real News about the just announced plan to revitalize Perkins.
They told us that they found a developer for the property, but they didn't tell us who. They said that they spoke with the mayor. The mayor is going to give them a piece of property for them to start building.
The city said last week it awarded a company called Beatty Development the right to redevelop the 17-acre site, home to over 600 people.
And I am worried because they have said several things, and didn't keep their word.
And most important, will the city's plan include the community that at times seems not just forgotten, but ignored?
That they going to move all of us back in here and it's going to be a better place and all that, because half of the people are not going to be able to come back at all.
So Taya, what do we know about this deal? I mean, Perkins Homes...
Okay, a little background on Perkin Homes. Not going to go too deep into it, but from this report that I'm seeing about housing, it says the Perkins Homes was slated by the city of Baltimore. Let's see what year this is. 1918, in the Baltimore Sun, it said this area, from a point of view of city-wide balance of racial areas should be occupied by white families, probably largely foreign-born. It is not naturally a Negro area, but has been partly repopulated with Negroes. The Negro inhabitants which would be evacuated from this area should form part of a similar development in a more desirable location. So this has been public housing for poor people of various backgrounds for almost a century now. And what I think is really the problem, and what these people don't fucking get the point of, is that you can have all the fucking public housing you want, but the point is that you're anchoring poor people to a certain lifestyle. You're anchoring them to the public housing lifestyle. Once they get rich enough, which in some cases you don't want them to, if you're promoting poverty like the state does, you don't want them to leave. McCullough Homes was the other one. It says the first Negro housing project was planned to offer a splendid barrier against the encroachment of colored into an adjacent good white residential neighborhood, which was Bolton Hill. So this is Baltimore. These public housing projects, people think, oh, this is good for the people or whatever. Not really, because they were used in order to fence people into the certain area. Then you belong in Perkins Homes, you belong in McCullough Homes. Now, that's not to say that I'm judging these people for living there. I'm just saying that in reality, they should be thinking about dismantling what if you really think about it, was a racist system to begin with.
City just announced. What did the city say?
Well, first off, Perkins Homes is a 75-year-old complex that houses low-income residents. There are families that have been there literally for generations.
So I think this actual project is 75 years old. It might be that the previous one goes back even longer and it was raised and rebuilt upon.
Now, BD Development is making a play to be able to revitalize Perkins projects and once again receive federal and state subsidies and tax subsidies to do so. Well, that follows BD's pattern.
And BD Development, BD Development Harbor Point.
Exactly. This follows his pattern of, for example, using enterprise zones, which means you get state funding because you're using an area, a low-income area, in order to say, I want to do this development project here. I promise I will build up infrastructure and make lovely new homes for these low-income residents. Please give me this state money. So he has used state money, federal money, and local money before to fund his projects and get tax subsidies.
Well, Lucky, there weren't many details about the deal for Perkins Homes to redevelop it, but they did say something very interesting. They said, we will have housing for all levels of income. I mean, you've got 600 families there. What do you think that means? How do you interpret that kind of cryptic language about the future of Perkins Homes?
600 families, 1,400 people roughly live there. When I'm concerned, whenever you hear billionaires are now going to do what's right for poor folk. Nobody object to that Perkins home needs some renovation. What the objection is, why do you have to displace those families? If you bringing in units, you should already account for the 600 families. So you need to add the 600 units to the development you're doing. And when you hear these cold words, we've been here before about how the developers come in.
This guy actually makes a number of great points, and I actually like his attitude. He's a maintenance guy, and the funny thing though is that he's wearing a Cheech and Chong shirt, so there's that. But he makes he has like a good inside view of how these housing projects are being managed.
Increase the community, and you just said something, mixed income. Do you really think someone's going to spend $400,000 for a home and knowingly know that you have a low-income person? The stigma of it that they put on it. So we know that's going to be counterproductive for not only that $400,000 family, but the low-income family.
Wow. Well, Jeff, we talked a lot. You worked with homeless, healthcare for the homeless for years, and we talked a lot about housing. Is this another, one of the rumors has been the city just wants to convert all these public housing units into private and get rid of, low-income people. Is this another step in that direction, in your opinion?
I fear that it likely is. The gentrification that's already begun. We have Harbor East, we have Harbor Point.
So, okay, he looks like a albino George Clinton there, but I think he does have a good point there that, yeah, the city, here's the reason why the city would want to get rid of public housing projects just for its own convenience. The issue is that you have an uncapped, this is the same as with healthcare. And in fact, I mean, I think the same model could be made, just transcending every single, really every single service provided by the government, or beyond that, when you're talking about public sector. Okay, you're talking about uncapped cost. Why is it uncapped? Well, you're talking about residents that they don't have any financial obligation for the property that they are occupying. They don't. In many cases, I don't think they even pay rent, or they pay some symbolic rent. I'm not sure, and I could follow up on it, but whether they pay rent or not, or they're getting some massive subsidy. Okay, in either case, they're getting some massive subsidy. Then you have to account for all the other shit that goes into keeping those properties. So you have all that federal money going into just having the place, having the lights on. Now, how do you account for if there's a fire there, if there's any damages? You end up having a great deal of cost that goes into it that's uncapped. Because the people that are living there, they're not responsible for what they're occupying. They break a faucet. Oh, fuck. I'm just going to call the maintenance guy. And the maintenance guy is paid by the city. And the city they can send him, first of all, he's a union employee. The accountability for these people, and they go into this, is so low. And the abuse is so high of their job that you're basically having people living in accommodations that, as the woman showed earlier, are beyond slum accommodations by Western standards. So these people, you've set up a system just like with healthcare. What's the problem that gets created? It's not that they don't have the right to maintenance of the property and the housing itself. It's that the scarcity becomes an issue, because then you get to the question of, are you going to have people to maintain it? Can you pay those people? Can you buy the materials to maintain it? That depends on the housing budget. And if Baltimore's housing budget gets bankrupted by cost overruns or whatever reasons, there could be plenty of fiscal reasons why the housing budget gets killed or gets or runs out. Among them, the overhead. Then you create this living conditions crisis that is really no joke.
And Perkins Homes is right in the middle of all that.
Right.
So what's the chance that the 600 units, which have been dedicated to low-income folks, what's the chance that they'll have that many units in this new development? Bill Clinton eliminated the requirement that when public housing units are destroyed or rehabbed, that they have to be replaced on a one-to-one basis. Bill Clinton eliminated that.
Many things are legacy he's given
Oh,
us.
indeed.
Right.
But some cities decided to keep that policy. Seattle, San Francisco. We begged the city of Baltimore to keep that policy. Oh no, we were told by a variety of housing commissioners, no, we can't do that here in Baltimore.
No, I just wanted to add that.
Okay, I want to give a comment to what Jeff Singer said. Now, from a progressive standpoint, he makes a good comment that, yes, Clinton betrayed the progressives, but really think about it, though. If you're committing to public housing on a one-to-one basis, always replacing it, then you're basically banking on the fact that there's always going to be at least the same amount of poor people in your city. You're not trying to... The problem that I see with public housing, and it's the same thing I see with other things like free education and public school. And I'm not against public school as a principle, but you see some parallels here. When you have all of these baseline requirements, you're talking about school lunch program and all that shit. So they're committing to a service that in the future, first of all, you don't know if you can provide for it, and second of all, you're basically giving a prognostication that yes, there's going to be a lot of poor people in the future. Instead of so you're not. I'm not telling anybody to say, oh, forget about it. There's not going to be any poor people, but you have to. The effort should be put into giving the people jobs and an economy where they don't have to live in public housing. That would be my response. And I don't even think it's a capitalist standpoint. It's a standpoint of just good administration and whatever. That even in a lot of these social democratic countries, I don't believe that they have this type of standard where they're just doing this public housing on a one-to-one basis when it gets demolished. It's just not a smart strategy in my opinion. Now, obviously Albino George Clinton has a different opinion, but yes, he's right that the Clintons, if they're so progressive, why did they do this elimination when there are plenty of their voters? Let's be honest, plenty of their voters live in public housing or need public housing in their minds. That was a betrayal in my opinion.
We're saying we want to have housing replaced for people, but the thing is, the city over the past 25 years, the public housing has dwindled by 30%, and there's only, let's say, around 12,000 or fewer public housing units left, and another 4,000 are going to be sold to private developers. So if you look at this trend, we're losing our public housing.
I've heard Catherine Pugh say this. I've heard former Mayor Sheila Dixon, and Catherine Pugh is current mayor of Baltimore. Public housing is not like a lifetime solution. It's only supposed to be temporary. Well, Jeff, why don't you react to that? And I'll get Lucky next.
Because historically, there is no support for that notion. And yes, we hear it all the time. Every housing commissioner in Baltimore said it. The mayors always say it. But no, when public housing was first created in 1937, excuse me, when it was first created, there was no language about it being transitional housing and people should go, it's a starter home, and then you buy your housing. Most countries have vibrant public housing sectors. We don't.
Yeah. And Lucky, what do you think? I mean, do you just completely eliminating public housing in Baltimore?
So to Jeff Singer, I would reply, he should check out the public housing in France, where you have all of these immigrants from Muslim and African countries, where there's just there's riots all the time, there's high crime, high drug use, unhealthy conditions, poor maintenance. It's public housing. Yeah, that's a social democratic country with a lot of public housing, supposedly vibrant in his mind. No, that is not the type of public housing that I think we need in this country. We need a country where exactly what he's trying to disprove is happening. If there is public housing at all, it has to be for people that are under the they're under duress very recently, or they've and you have to have a program to direct them towards ways that they can become independent of the public housing, and if there is none, to get them, then they should be directed towards something like buying their own home. If they want to continue living in the public housing project, my suggestion would be that you direct them in a way that they would end up buying the home that they live in. I don't think that's really a problem.
I believe completely eliminating public housing. But when you have the bourgeois and the elite of Baltimore City now justifying because now it look bad, it's an eyesore. Well, in the city, in their charter, they supposed to provide decent and affordable and stable housing, but they have not done because they allowed the property to go decay the way they have. And now you see, because we have no progressive public housing policies in the city, now you have the money grabbers, what I call them, coming in, grabbing, making promises, and the citizens of Baltimore is hurt. But let's keep in mind, when you talk about Perkins, where it sits and it's in what you would call that
It's like
developer
it's a
gold
chemical
mine.
corridor.
Exactly.
It's linking to like a basically like ritzy waterfront property.
Right, but the article Sunday spoke about a $30 million grant. So, in other words, the $30 million grant going to go to who? The developer? Not to fix up. Cannot keep on displacing people at the rate that this city have.
Now, I think that this guy, Lucky Crosby, again, I think he makes a number of good points, and this is one of them, which is, and I fully agree with the real news on this, which is, if you've seen any of these previous videos, that's not really common. No, we shouldn't be giving subsidies or any other type of free money to developers. We should say, okay, we're going to privatize this housing project. You want to buy it, you buy it. No fucking help, nothing. You want to buy out the residents. That might be a good idea. If they really want that fucking property, I think that a good idea, and this is really, I'm just pulling it out of my ass right now. Give $45,000 or whatever the value of the lot is, individual lot, to each resident, and then fuck you. Knock it down, do whatever the fuck you want, but no free government money for these asshole, billionaires. That's the same thing. I think that when it comes to corporate welfare, there's one of the real unique places where libertarian or free market capitalists and far left socialists have an agreement that it's bad for the economy. I think it's bad for the economy. I think that if you're really going to develop something, go straight to the residents, or even buy out the city, and then give some portion to the residents, and then fuck you. You can do whatever the fuck you want with that land after that, as long, I guess it has to be zoned. It's local control. I can't say what the city of Baltimore. City of Baltimore wants to zone it residential. That's their choice. But no, I think that this is a great point by Lucky Crosby.
When we have the vacant houses crisis that we have, and no one is addressing that. We need a progressive policy that take in the humanity of people.
But just so people understand, I mean, listen, this is very interesting because you have Harbor Point, Harbor East, which are just within a stone's throw.
Exactly.
And you have literally all the sort of jewels, let's say, of Baltimore. And the one place where people can live of low income and have access to those amenities is Perkins Homes.
Exactly. And it should be kept for that reason alone.
Now, Tay, you did a very poignant interview with a young woman who talked about that. Tell me about the interview, how people in Perkins Homes reacting to this news.
Well, first I spoke to 4 or 5 women in Perkins Homes. One in particular was named Tanita Wilson, and she was kind enough to let me into her home to show me. She had some pictures of what her home looked like before the repairs happened. So let me just give you, she told me when I asked her, what is it like living in Perkins Homes? She said, it's like living in a jail without bars. And that just really hurt my heart.
Living in a jail without bars. I think that's very interesting language. Okay, so remember that public housing, according to all the people on this panel, including the reporter, they believe that that there is a right to public housing. There's a right to, just like there's a right to health care. Health care is a human right. Housing is a human right, according to these people. Well, when you're in prison, you get health care and you get housing. So there's really no contradiction here. Unfortunately, this is where this portion of the video cuts off for me. But the notion that public housing will get people the life that they are dreaming of is a complete illusion. In the end, you are at the mercy of a corporate conglomerate that is, guess what? Your government. It's your state. And they get to choose when people come in to maintain your home. And they get to choose which lot you get. And they get to choose who lives there. And they get to choose a lot of things. And that's where we're going to leave off for now. So stay tuned for the next part of this episode of the For Real News on Baltimore Public Housing.